A further reality is that all the Gospels were written anonymously, and none of the writers claims to be an eyewitness. Names are attached to the titles of the Gospels, the Gospel according to Matthew, but these titles are later additions to the Gospels, provided by editors and scribes to inform readers who the editors thought were the authorities behind the different versions. That the titles are not original to the Gospels themselves should be clear upon some simple reflection. Whoever wrote Matthew did not call it the Gospel according to Matthew. The persons who gave it that title are telling you who, in their opinion, wrote it. Authors never title their books according to. These are the words of skeptic and popular Bible scholar Bart Ehrman. He and others argue that because the Gospels do not contain the names of their authors within the text, then we can never know who the real authors were. This is simply inaccurate. New Testament scholar Michael Licona says it well. It was not unusual for ancient authors to leave their names out of their works. Plutarch was a Greek author who penned more than 50 biographies during the late 1st to early 2nd centuries. Plutarch's name is absent from all of them. It is the tradition that has been passed down through the centuries that gives us information pertaining to who wrote these biographies, and no one questions that Plutarch is the author. Another example is Tacitus, a Roman historian of the late 1st to early 2nd centuries AD. He was the author of the Annals, in which he recorded the history of Rome from the death of Augustus down to the reign of Nero, a roughly 50-year period. Interestingly, his name does not appear at all in the text, just like the Gospels and Plutarch. The only place where his name appears is at the very beginning, in what we may regard as the title. Curiously, skeptics do not doubt that Tacitus wrote the Annals. This is a blatant double standard on how skeptics treat other ancient documents and the New Testament. It is important to understand that most, if not all, of the New Testament was more than likely originally written down on scrolls. The normal practice to designate authorship for scrolls was to attach a tag on the outside identifying the work in question, not in the text of the work itself. When Christians made greater use of the codex, the early form of the book, if you will, it was then that indicating authorship at the beginning of a work would likely come into practice. Thus again, my point above with reference to secular works. It is actually indeed likely that attributions were added to the text based on information that was previously external to the text in the form of a scroll tag. In an interesting note, anonymous works were relatively rare and must have been given a title in libraries. They were often given the name of a false author. Works without titles easily got double or multiple titles when names were given to them in different libraries. The Gospels were never given more than one title, as the early church tradition always attributed the Gospels to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. One book in the New Testament, Hebrews, is truly an anonymous work, as there are multiple traditions for the author of this epistle. To sum up this issue, the fact that many ancient works did not include the author's name within the text, combined with the unanimous testimony of the early church as to the authorship of the Gospels, cannot be explained by anything other than the assumption that the titles were part of the works from the beginning. It is inconceivable that the Gospels could circulate anonymously for up to 60 years and then in the 2nd century suddenly display unanimous attribution to certain authors. If they had originally been anonymous, then surely there would have been some variation in 2nd century attributions, as was the case with some of the 2nd century apocryphal Gospels. It is likely that the 4 canonical Gospels were never even formally anonymous.